Right, so tonight you are literally over my shoulder, which is quite nice. Okay, so welcome to episode 10. Bet you never thought we'd get here, did you? Tonight we are going to be mixing. We're going to mix a track. Track is in Ableton Live. It's probably going to be the first track on the new album, and it's the piece that you hear the demo of. Is used as the intro tune for this thing every time I do it. So tonight we're going to just have a play at getting that mixed, getting it into some kind of order, and I'll show you some of my process for that, how we go about it. So let's begin with tools. Most important things. First of all, I've had a wee, that's important. Secondly, I've got a cuppa, that's very important. Thirdly, I have a mixing desk. Mixing desk is very useful for mixing, I think we'll all agree. Could do it all in software, but I choose not to. I like the kind of tactile thing of messing around with faders and slidey stuff, so yeah. Also, this routes all of my effects, so all my effects are added here at the mixer, because I like my hardware effects units, which are over here like this. I personally think they sound a little bit more natural than the software versions that I have available to me in my digital audio workstation software, Ableton Live. So yeah, there's that. That's a personal preference thing. Your mileage will undoubtedly vary on that. So that's what we're using. This piece of gear over here, this big beast, is a 24 track straight to hard disk recorder. So when I'm writing and recording, everything gets recorded straight to a hard drive, which is down in the corner there, that's connected to that thing. For mixing, what I do is I import the audio from that drive into Ableton. So I've got it all laid out here, track by track. And then that gadget becomes a 24 channel audio interface, which is quite cool that it's got that kind of dual use to it. You can capture audio straight to hard drive with it, or you can hook it up to your computer and it becomes 24 channels of audio each way. Great. So what I'm doing is I'm using that to put each individual channel of audio out to a channel on the desk, and then I add effects at the desk. Those are mixed into the master here. The master goes back into channels 17 and 18 on that, and they come back into here and get recorded as a completed mix on a track in Ableton just down here. And then that's the mix that we work with for mastering and for release and so on and so forth. So perhaps a slightly more complicated workflow than you're used to, and a more complicated audio signal path than you might be used to, but you know what, each to their own. It works for me, I like it, and it's fab. So I'm going to briefly switch you over to Ableton so we can look at what we've got in this project. So bear with me, caller, your call is important to me. There we go, you should now be seeing my Ableton screen and still hearing my voice, hopefully. Yeah, that looks good. So we have kick drum, snare drum, hi-hats, toms, various synthesizers, lots and lots of those, of course. My theremin, which is lovely, and some other bits of kit, just drum kit, cymbals and stuff like that on a separate track over there. So they correspond to kick on the mixer, snare on the mixer, so I've got a whole bunch of channels on the mixer that are dedicated to that. So there we go. So what I've done with these already is on every channel I've put a noise gate. This is just so that we can get rid of any hiss or rumble or background noise, electrical interference, whatever that happened to come through on the signals for those. They're set very low, they're set down to minus 60 dB typically, which is well down below what you can really hear, but it's really important to clean as much stuff out of the mix as possible. So what you'll also notice is that some of these stems, like that's the kick drum stem there, that's just kick drum on that. You'll notice the snare drum one is shorter, and that's because I've cut all of the silence out of it. There's a long bit of silence at the start there. We don't want that. That could have noise in it. It could contain uninteresting pops and noises and hums and stuff like that. Why make the noise gate work at it? Why risk it? We just get rid of it, and there you go. So what I've done going through all of these tracks is I've just set some starts and ends, tops and tails on all of these, and I've also just set up a very basic EQ curve that just cuts out the low rumbles, the high hisses, and just tries to find the presence in each track. So if we hit play and bring the snare drum in, we should hear a snare drum now, which would be nice. There we are. I'll run that quite hot so you can hear it. I appreciate you hearing this through the camera mics, so it's not going to be great, but that's okay. So there we are. That's what drums sound like. Snare drum, hi-hats. And what we've tried to do here, as you can see, is just trim these down to just the frequencies where they're interesting. So the hi-hats, for example, very narrow band. It's got a whole bunch of stuff going on in it down there that is just noise. We don't want it. We're not interested in that at all. So let's get rid of it. So the first thing we do with a mix is we just try to get rid of as much stuff as possible, which seems perhaps slightly counterintuitive, but there we are. That's how we go. And we've got, there are our toms, there's some synth, bit of lead synth, there's our nice little homemade string synth there. Bass, and finally a bit of theremin. Not finally, actually, there's a bit of kick to put in as well. So that's a very basic mix, that's very raw. It's not quite what we want yet. So we've got, you know, all the instruments there, but they're all completely dry. I mean, if we take this, there's our bass synth. And you can see here that this is, we could perhaps live with a little bit more bottom end in that. Too much. The other thing that needs is some delay on it. That's interesting, my delay is not synchronizing properly, so let's just make sure we are actually sending synchronization to it, which we are. Interesting. I wonder why that's not receiving. Just bear with me for a moment while we have a little look over here. Sync. Says it's PC, that's fine. Let's have another go like that, shall we? There we are, synchronise. So there you go, this is without effects. And then with. And similarly, these toms get a bit of effect on them as well, so you get a nice ripple from them. Wait for it. There we go, nice little repeat on them, which is quite gorgeous. So the key thing there is we need to start adding all the elements together. Just listen to them dry to start off with. Fairly happy with that. Snare. So we've got some reverb there. We can go extreme with it, or we can just go just a little. Don't want to go too crazy with it. Nice. Hi-hats. So that's really dry again. We can put a little bit of top on that. A little bit of reverb just to give it. I don't want to go too crazy with it. That snare needs a bit more top to it because it's not sounds too bottomy to me. So let's take some of the low frequencies out. Remember, it's always better to remove than to add. And that kick doesn't have quite the percussive feel to it that I want, really. I'd like to take it a bit less bottom. I like my kick to have plenty of mid-range presence, so it actually cuts through the mix. In fact, I'd rather it be middly than bottomy, to be honest, but we'll give that a little bit more depth. That's nice. Snare's probably a little thin now in comparison. The reverb's added quite a lot of top end to that snare, so we'll just compensate by putting a bit of the bottom frequency back in on it. We'll carry on working with the kit for a moment. Let's get these toms in as well. Get the rest of the kit bits and pieces in as well. And we'll jump around the track a little bit to find all the different sounds. We've got that little critic, that's quite nice, a little clicky thing. That needs a bit more presence, I think. I'd rather have more of that and less of the cymbal, so I'm going to take a bit of top off it and boost the gain. That's quite nice. More reverb on that. That's quite nice. Okay, so we've got a kit, that's quite handy. So what we'll do now is we'll try for some synths. Now these I think are probably okay because they're quite toppy anyway. I've cut the bottom end off them. They've already got effects on. I might give them a bit of delay just to make them feel a little bit wider. They're quite nice, I like those. Here's the theremin. That's lovely. And we'll add in our other string synth. Nice. Let's put some kit with that. In addition to all of that, we've also got a solo synth as well, which we'll just hear untreated. noise livens that up quite nicely, and a bit of reverb on the top, and then it gets a second sound. We've got 2 synths. Quite nice. Right, so what I'm noticing here is we've got quite a big difference in volume between this part and this part, which is a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the track, and then we're going to chop out the bits that we don't want on that one, and vice versa on this one. So we'll get rid of that. We'll scoot along here. That's tight. Ooh, that's ever so tight. Okay, so let's split that. Oh, we're right down to individual samples almost here. Let's split it there and there, and we'll get rid of that one there. Yeah, that's working. And then we'll do the same again here. And delete that. And then one last one here. So we're doing a little bit of editing here just to get this exactly how we want it. Ooh, that's huge. Split that. No, that's a bit too close. Let's back off a bit. Let's do it about there. Split that. So let's get this right. We want to get rid of that one and keep that one, and then we can do that. So these are still going to the same fader on the desk. They still have the same destination output, but they don't overlap with each other at all. They'll still have exactly the same effects on them, which is fine because I'm happy with that. I just want to boost the gain on these a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on that channel, I'm going to pop a utility on the end there, which just lets us up the gain a bit. So I'm going to give that 3 dB, and yeah, I'm going to give it 4 dB for now, and we'll see what it sounds like. So let's that's nice. Still be louder. They're a bit hot now. I'll bring the overall mix volume down a bit. That's looking nice actually. We can now have a look at what overall levels are like. They're quite high. No, that's good actually. That's fine. Plenty of headroom there. That's good. Cool. Okay. Yeah, that was a plugin called Levels. I'll show you that actually. It's quite nice. It kind of measures the comparative loudness of your track with itself, and as an overall measure, and it does true peak measurements, and it keeps an eye on the dynamic range in the track, and you can use it to work out if you're cluttering your bass frequencies with unwanted stuff, and it gives you an overview of your stereo field. It's actually quite neat. You'll notice that I'm being really stingy here and I'm running the trial all the way at the end before I buy it, but I am definitely going to buy it because it's fab, to be honest. And I've had some really good times with it since I found it last week and thought, oh, I'll have a go at that. And yeah, it's quite a nice plugin. I like it. It's improving my mixing, which is good. Okay, so we've got kind of like a rough feel for this now, and I'm going to bang this over to I'm going to switch the audio over so you're hearing it straight from the desk, which is always quite nice. And I'm just going to give it a run through and we'll see what we think of it. And what I might actually do at this point is record it while I'm at it. So this process is done as bouncing. This is where you take your mix and you drop it onto one track, in this case a stereo track that has the entire mix in it. So we're just going to record that entire mix onto here. So remember, that's going, everything individually is going out to the desk. We mix the audio levels, we put the effects in, we pan it left and right, get the effects back in from over there, then the whole thing comes out through these masters, back into channels 17 and 18 into here, and then we record it. And that's how we get our stereo master of the, a stereo mix rather, not master, because that's a different thing for another episode. Our stereo mix of the track will be in here. So I'm just going to arm record that. That's going to get me tracks 17 and 18. That's fine. So what we're going to do is turn that on and off there. I'm just going to change over your audio. I'll come back to you shortly. Hopefully this is working and you'll hear it. Let's give it a quick test actually. Ha! Okay, so I'm not getting MX1 audio and I don't know why, because I'm seeing it and I don't quite understand why we're not getting it, which is a bit weird. So bear with me while I just have a little mess around in OBS, try to sort that out. Hello. Yeah, I'm just going to try and get the audio for you because I've lost it. I think it's because I've plugged my audio interface into a different USB port, so it's probably lost it. So let's look at sources. MX1 audio. Oh my word, there are so many inputs from this. Where are we? We're on 3 and 4? No, yeah, maybe. What I want, not digital 3, mix. I think it's that. Let's try that. Okay, so I'm just going to pop you on the desk audio and I'll see you on the other side and you can have a listen through this mix. We'll record it at the same time and everything will be hopefully fairly glorious. So let's see how that turns out. I'm going to drink my cup of tea. See you in a minute. So there you have it. That's a track recorded and mixed down. Now what will happen next is I will go away and fertile about with that and have a mess with it and have a play with it and listen to it a lot of times with fresh ears to start off with. So I won't do anything further with it tonight. This will be for a fresh session tomorrow, probably first thing in the morning, because the freshest ears are the very first thing. So I'll have a listen back to that mix and see what I want to change in it, where it's dynamically not working, what needs to change as we go along, because that is just flat levels. That's like everything is just chuntering along at one level all the way through. So it's basically quite a lengthy process of refinement from here, whereby we just try to make that the best it can be. And that's going to involve a lot of messing around with EQ curves, so these kind of things here. Just trying to pull out exactly the right frequencies in each instrument. This is quite rough at the moment, quite rough and ready, but it's just to get my ear in, make sure that the overall there's nothing wrong with any of the individual stems, which there isn't. I will probably pull apart this track with the rest of the kit on it, separate those out into separate instruments as well. But mostly that's kind of getting there. So there's a few more days effort on that, a few more sessions effort on it. Like I say, don't spend too long on it at any one time, because you very, very rapidly lose your judgment for a mix. I find I do anyway, especially late at night when you're tired. It's not a good time to try to judge what's going on. So I find little and often is usually the best approach. So once we've got that, we'll then look at boosting the gain in it a little bit, putting a bit of limiting on it so it doesn't go past peak thresholds that we want it to, and then we'll look at getting that mastered up and ready for release. So yeah, a few more things to do with that, but that's a nice start, from a bunch of raw stems with no treatment on them at the start of the evening to, you know, it's on its way to a mix. There's no rush. That's the most important thing. There's never a rush. I can afford to take the time I want to take. So there we are. Thanks very much for joining me again. It's been lovely to have you here in Studio Nowhere, and I hope you'll join me again soon. Thank you very much for stopping by, and good night.